Thanks for joining me. In a previous video, when I had to repair Libby's rear brakes, I hinted at a forthcoming trip to the northeast. Well, that was our annual visit to Beamish Living Museum up in County Durham. Each year they hold a 4-day event called Dig for Victory, where areas of the museum are returned to the 1940s to show just what it was like on the home front during the Second World War. For a number of years now, I've been privileged to be one of those asked to participate in the event. For those of you who don't know about Beamish Museum, here's a bit of background information. It's set in 350 acres of lovely County Durham countryside, and it first opened on its current site in 1972. It's a living history museum, so visitors are encouraged to touch and interact with many of the exhibits, and the staff all dress in period costume. It's split into different areas, all connected by a 1.5 mile long road that runs round the site. There's another road leading off to a pit village, so doing a full round trip is about 2.25 miles. For a week each year we get to set up camp and live within the museum. There's lots of static exhibits set up to depict England during the war. We drive around to the different areas and tell visitors about the vehicles and put on a bit of a show. It's very popular. Incidentally, the main gateway through which all the visitors enter is actually an old steam hammer called Tiny Tim. It was built for the Darlington Forge in 1883. Before we go any further, I must just apologise for some of the video and sound. As we're in a living history museum, we're wearing clothing of the period, in this case World War II American military, so I couldn't use my usual setup for the camera and mic. The camera's strapped to my chest under my shirt to keep it hidden, and the mic's clipped in a side pocket. So there's times when you might see a shirt flap partially cover the lens. There's also the problem of my beard, which sometimes makes an appearance in the top of the picture. Hope it doesn't spoil it for you. Okay, we're leaving the camp and off on a run round the museum. This is a busy event and there's visitors all over, so we have to ride very carefully, and there's a 12-mile-an-hour speed limit on site. They have their own transport system that uses vintage buses and trams to carry the visitors around. We'll see plenty of those as we go. We're camped up next to the vintage fairground, and there's a railway station just behind us that operates steam trains, though they weren't running at this time. Up onto the cobbled street now that leads to the 1900s town, but we're going to turn right at the top and we'll come back to this later. We're just passing the footbridge over to the station on the left. That's actually Rowley Station and came from near Concert. It was the first set of buildings moved to the museum back in the early 1970s. It's reconstructed as it was in the Edwardian period. We're crossing the tram tracks here, so we have to watch out for the trams and give way to them. I can't think of many places you'd have to do that when you're out on a ride. The other bike there is a 1941 Harley Davidson WLA, and that's my mate Rob riding it. It actually belongs to his sister, but Rob now owns his own. He's the guy that recently bought Dave off me. There's 2 videos about Dave on the channel, and I'll put links to that at the end in case you haven't seen them. So next year there should be 4 of us riding here. We're travelling round the top of the events field now. This section of the road's only for transport, so there's no people walking about here. By the way, Libby is properly dressed for this event, so that's a real Thompson machine gun in the scabbard up front. I hasten to add that it is deactivated though. Filming of this main run was done late afternoon on the first day, just before closing, so it's pretty quiet. A lot of the other filming and pictures show it when it's busy. The building on the right is the tram and bus depot, where all the museum's vehicles are housed and maintained. We're just coming into one of the main public areas now, with tram and bus stops on both sides. And we've got a nice open top tram at the stop on the right. There's also one of the open top double-decker buses just in front. We're turning off to the left down the steep hill into the pit village. There's always plenty of people walking about, so you'll sometimes hear me just give the siren a quick blip. It's louder than the horn and seems to work better. This is Francis Street, and we've got a row of miners' cottages, a chapel, a school, a band hall, and even a fish and chip shop. The fish and chips are real traditional style, cooked in coal-fired ranges in proper beef dripping. They're gorgeous, but the queues to get them are always very long. Into the pit yard now, and there's a drift mine to the right that you can actually go down. And straight ahead, it's the winding gear and steam engine from Chop Hill Colliery. We'll park up here for a little while. This is the place we come to for breakfast, because the refreshment cabin serves hot pork pies in the morning. Absolutely delicious. There's a few horses and sometimes horse-drawn vehicles about in the museum. This is also the turning point for the buses that come down to the pit village. Right, back through the village and back up the steep hill. The buildings were moved here from their original locations around the northeast and reconstructed as they would have been in the 1900s. Very sharp left-hand corner at the top of the hill, and with all the old vehicles and people about, all traffic goes straight across to the tram depot and does a turn around there to carry on the circuit. The military checkpoint on the right is normally manned by soldiers who check and stamp reproduction pass cards for the visitors. Because it's nearly closing time, they've actually stopped now. It leads up to the 1940s farm, where you find the land girls and British military in and around the farm buildings. There's also a dance band playing 1940s music in the big barn. These are the bus and tram stops for the main entrance, which is up on the right. Everybody visiting the museum starts the journey here. As it's late in the day, most folk have gone by now, but normally this is quite a crowded area. On the right, just by the tram stop, we've got a lane that leads up to Pockley. This is a village that's set in the 1820s, so we don't go up there as it's out of era. Up there you'll find Pockley Old Hall and Gardens, which date back to at least the 1440s. There's the Quilter's Cottage, St Helen's Church, and even a railway operated by a full-size replica of the Puffing Billy, the famous 1813 steam locomotive. The museum's constantly adding new sections and attractions. Earlier this year they completed the reconstruction of a farm moved from Eastgate. Spain's Field Farm, as it's called, was donated by the family that owned it, and every bit was recorded as it was dismantled. It involved moving nearly 1,200 tons of stone and timber and carefully rebuilding it on the site just as it had been. Even samples of the wallpaper, paint and lino were taken so that replacements could be authentic. It's set as it was in the 1950s. There's also a complete 1950s town under construction. We've just passed the entrance to the welfare hall on the left. Some parts of it are already complete and opened earlier this year. The shops on the main street are open for business, and there's various houses finished too. There's another fish and chip shop, a hairdresser's, and even a cafe. The big building under construction we've just passed, that's going to be a cinema, and that should be open for next year. We're just entering the 1900s town again now, with its cobbled streets and tram tracks. We're going to park up outside the old co-op and just have a look round. Many of the buildings in the museum were carefully taken to pieces and reassembled here just as they were. Some are replicas of original ones, but all are finished as they would have been in the early 1900s. Some of the shops actually functioning as businesses and selling goods. There's a bakery, a sweet shop, and a pub you can even sit and have a couple of pints in if it takes your fancy. Right, we've finished the full circuit now, so I'll head back down to the camp. Hope you've enjoyed this little trip around what I think is one of the finest museums of its kind. I'd highly recommend a visit, and even if you've been before, go again. It's constantly changing and there's always something new to see. I'm going to leave you with just a selection of photos and short clips from my week there, just to whet your appetite a bit. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a comment, and if you want to watch more of my ramblings, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button. Hope you can join me again, so cheers for now.